A little dark. There we go. Got a little bit of light going on. Oh, good morning, Jeff Dawson from Dallas, Texas. It's cool, not chilly. It's cool. I don't know what this current administration, during Trump, it was always a crisis. Remember when Pelosi went down to the border and said, "Oh, look at how cute all these children are. Oh, I just want to take them all home." And how many did she take home? Well, that would be zero. And AOC went down there with her crusade. Now, at least she is holding true about these children being detained. But she isn't on the media every day, wall to wall, about her outrage over this. She made a few statements, and now she's shut up. Gee, I wonder why. It's not in her demeanor to be quiet. That's not what she does well. So yesterday, Abbott has a really good message. And he's talking about it is nothing less than a crisis at the border. Jen, it's not a challenge. Would you have said that the dates of 12/7/1941 and 12/16/1944 were challenges? You probably would, but then you make bricks look smart every time you talk. And even the media, yeah, that'd be CNN, MSNBC, nobody, watching them is just like, well, that's a whole different story. Caitlin Collins is getting a little upset with Jen's non-response. You can hear her getting frustrated in the questions not being answered. At least Kayleigh and Donald would answer them. They usually didn't like what he said, but at least they did answer the questions. Psaki's not answering anything. And I love it when she says, well, go talk to DHS or HHS or FEMA. I'm sure you'll get more information. And then they go, well, we talked to them and they won't give us any. And then she's like, well, I'll take the next question now. But remember, this was all about being transparent. There's nothing transparent about this current administration. Nothing. I mean, we're hearing excuses that, well, he's battling the pandemic. Trump set the board for these vaccines to be developed. And they were. You might not like him, that's fine. But you cannot deny that those vaccines were a direct result of Operation Warp Speed. That's like saying Harry Truman won World War II. Well, if it weren't for FDR's leadership and the generals that he picked to combat Italy, Germany, and Japan, what would Harry Truman have inherited? Yes, the United States claimed victory, VE and VJ Day. And Truman celebrated with America. Biden wants to celebrate with Biden and his administration. But to see the press starting to get frustrated and fumbling, because what's her name? Bolden? Kate Bolden. She interviewed Representative Cuellar yesterday. And that was a fiasco. And Cuellar said, well, I'm 100% behind the Biden administration, but there's some things I don't like. Well, then you can't be 100% behind it if there are things you don't like. You can say, I'm 90% in line with everything they're doing, but this side over here, I'm not real excited about. I can't get behind that, but he wouldn't say what that was. But when he started alluding that it is a crisis at the border, well, Kate didn't know what to do. She just started fumbling and bumbling, and like most of these bobbleheads, and that goes for Perino and McCollum and Brim. In fact, the only thing that Fox News is doing nowadays is like everybody's writing a book. Well, then go be an author and go write a book and get the hell off the air, because you're adding nothing to the discussion except promoting your own work. Is that what the news is turning into. And I don't watch the other networks enough to see how many of those anchors are writing books, because I really don't care. You want to be an anchor, be an anchor. You want to be an author, get off the air and be an author. Make a choice instead of spending half of your time promoting your own damn book. I mean, I let you people know I'm an author. You can find all my books on Amazon or go to LDDJenterprises.com. I got a list of them there, but I don't spend endless hours promoting my works. Maybe I should. I don't know. But Bolden was lost. She was lost when Cuellar started alluding that this was a disaster. And it is a humanitarian crisis. And if it wasn't, then why is DHS and FEMA involved? Let's see, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They respond to disasters. Usually they're natural disasters like Katrina, the storms that we saw rocking the Southeast yesterday, major tornadoes like the one that hit Joplin, the one that hit Tuscaloosa. FEMA responds to that. The Red Cross responds to that because they're disasters. FEMA is responding to what's going on at the border. That qualifies, you twit, Jen, as a crisis, or is that just beyond your mental capabilities to digest at $184,000 a year? It's pathetic. That's all it is, just pathetic. So let's get back to Abbott. Even the governor is not smelling ass. That's just the bottom line. But they're starting to get frustrated over this because they're not getting any questions answered. Now, apparently, Joe is going to have a press conference on the 25th. Let's see how long that's going to be. Let's see if he can go an hour, hour and a half, taking questions like Donald did. I didn't always agree with what Donald said. I don't agree with what most politicians say. I understand it's rhetoric. It's politics. And honesty in politics, that is the oxymoron of the 21st century. There is no such thing. It's politics. If we actually had someone, which Donald tried, to be as truthful as possible about important issues, I'd like to say he did his best. But COVID, yeah, when he started having his daily press conferences, I was like, you dumbass. What are you doing? Don't compete with that idiot from New York, Andrew Cuomo. This isn't a reality television show. And Donald misspoke so many times, I lost track. His handling of attacking the virus, I'll give him a C plus, B minus. And then he would start talking. And it's like, oh, damn it. Let your experts do the talking and not you. Oh, I was very disappointed in that. All right, but I'm getting off track here. So, Abbott has mobilized Texas Rangers. He's mobilized everybody he can to assist the border agents in stopping this influx. And that's all it is. It is an influx. Some people call it an invasion. That's what we heard when Trump was in office, and these caravans were coming up from Central and South America to get to the promised land. If these people are so impoverished, how the hell are they getting here? Who's paying for this? We're not talking a few hundred. We're talking tens of thousands. They've got to eat. So where are they getting the food? Is it just being handed out freely? I seriously doubt that. And who's giving them the Biden Harris t-shirts? Are they buying those? Or are they being parachuted in? Those are brand new shirts. I mean, hell, they look better than the refugees we see from the Vietnam War, from World War II. You watch those clips and you can tell those people are haggard. They're tired. They're dirty. They are defeated and dejected. You can see it in their faces. You don't see it from this group coming up. They've got all types of energy. Well, that means they're eating really good. If it was anything like Vietnam and World War II, they'd be dropping like flies. And even Korea. Those people caught up during the Korean conflict, they were dropping like flies. How come we're not seeing that? Yeah, you think about that. All right. So the press is starting to get frustrated. Abbott is really getting frustrated. You remember a little fort back in the South in the 19th century called Sumter? Or a bridge in Brandywine? They called that the shot that was heard around the world. So the feds are denying the governor and his people access to these sites. And I'm not being an alarmist, but I was talking to a friend about this the other day. Both of those events that I just described, we know what the outcome was. Is this where we're headed? Is a standoff between the state of Texas and the federal government and access to these centers? Remember when Cuomo wanted the Javits Center remodeled so it could handle the influx of COVID patients, and Trump said, let's do it. Trump also sent the USN Comfort to New York to help with it. Cameras were everywhere. We saw them refurbishing the Javits Center and the pains they were taking to accommodate the influx of patients. We saw the temporary facilities being built in Central Park. It was all on the news, and that was transparency. Why not today, Joe? What seems to be the problem here? Where's the transparency? That's right, there is none. Not a bit. What are you hiding? What are you afraid of? And why do you have that red-headed bobblehead covering for you? Now, if you're a Republican, this can be a good thing because it's destroying the liberal press's cover-up. Even they're starting to feel the pressure of no access. And like I said, this March 25th press conference ought to be a hoot. That aside, what happens when Abbott says enough is enough? We're going in. I think about that for a minute. We're going in, and we're going to find out what's going on, and we want to talk to these kids. And the federal agents say, no. Abbott's Rangers say, yes, we're coming in. This could go south real fast. And it wouldn't be good. Like I said, Brandywine, Fort Sumter. You think about those events. Why won't you let them have access, Joe? And were all these people, I just saw a clip this morning from American Voices where a bunch of liberals were chanting, close the camps. Where are they now? They're nowhere to be seen. That's called a double standard. Y'all need to think about that. And the Biden administration needs to let the press in, and you damn well better let the governor of Texas in. I mean, right now they're being diplomatic about it. And this ridiculous argument of we need to know why they're coming. Well, Trump found that out. That's why he made agreements with Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico in this mass migration. And said, And what is it about Joe saying, oh, don't come now, you can come later? What does that mean? And yet they're saying it isn't open borders, and they say that we're telling them not to come. No, you're saying don't come now. Well, so what is the plan? Are you just going to open the whole thing up when you think you have enough facilities to handle how many? 100? 200,000 people? Where are those camps going to be? Because that's all there is to it. Trump had it right. You're not coming across. Mexico, if you don't want to stop it, then you can take care of them until we've properly processed them. But that wasn't humanitarian. My ass. They're illegal. And Joe also said during this vaccine that he wants to keep Americans safe first. Yet we're transporting children with COVID across the nation. How does that make sense? Well, it really doesn't. Not at all. But, I mean, we are still a very divided nation. There's no doubt about it. And we're seeing that in Congress. There's a reason our founders were very big on making this a republic and not a democracy. Because all the democracies that they studied collapsed because the party in rule typically didn't have the welfare of the whole country in mind. They just had their welfare and their supporters in mind. The nuclear option was a disaster, and I believe they termed that in 2005. Harry Reid was the first one to make it open warfare on Republicans. And instead of the Republicans changing it when they had the House and the Senate, they said, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And that's not the case. There is a reason that you had to get a 2/3 majority. That meant everybody had to work together. You can have opposing views, but you still have to work together. Watch the movie Lincoln when they're trying to get the 13th Amendment passed. All right, so he's got all the Republican votes. Yeah, but he needs Democratic votes. That is the beauty of a republic. It's called working together. It's called compromising. It's called trading off. There is no trade-off now from anybody. as long as you're in power, what we'll do as we want to, and the hell with the rest of you. That is not what the founders set up. And I'm rereading the Federalist Papers, and if you haven't, I highly suggest you do. It shows the pains that Hamilton, Madison, and Jay went through in developing our Constitution. And they realized it wouldn't be perfect, but it would be the best that they could come up with by their analysis and historical analysis through the years of government, whether it was Greece, Rome, Holland, Germany, all of it. And saw the flaws in other governments and why they failed and what caused all the wars. And this is what they came up with, our current Constitution. I don't know how much longer it's going to stand. But we are a republic, which means the majority doesn't rule. All representatives rule. You have to work with people. I'm in construction, and if I walked onto a job and said it's my way or the highway, well, you know how that job's going to go. Right down the tank. I didn't have to like the people I worked for or worked with. I had to respect them, and we had to come together and put aside our differences and figure out the best way to deal with an identified problem. That is the beauty of construction. Not everyone's going to get their way, but we've got to do it the quickest, most productive, and safest way possible. In fact, I was on a job on 635, and there was an unidentified power line. I got with the general contractor. We took every step possible to resolve this issue because this line, no one's claiming the line. No one knows how deep it is, and we are in rock. So the only way we're going to find it is when our trencher hits it, and about 60 to 80,000 volts energize that piece of equipment. And how many people is that going to kill? Excuse me. But I made it very clear, and I told the owner of the company I worked for, I'm not doing it. I'm not sending men out there with the chance of knowing they're going to die if they hit this line. And I said, if you want to do it, if you want to give the order, you give the order. Go ahead. I won't do it. I'm not going to be liable for this. I told the state and I told the contractor the same thing. Well, they all just kind of sat there. And I said, do what you want to, guys. It's your call, not mine. In the end, we did come to a resolution, and it was done safely. But we all had to work together to come up with this. Everyone got involved. Owners of the company, vice presidents, the state, the foreman, our superintendents. They knew the problem. Now we had to resolve it. Now, that sure doesn't mean that I liked all these people, which I didn't. But that was personal. This business. And we did come to a resolution, and the line was put in safely. Otherwise, the 635 project, the ITS system, wouldn't be in operation because there'd be about a 100-foot gap. And you just can't lay wires on top of the ground, especially copper, because they'll just disappear in a heartbeat. This is a crisis at the border. It ain't a challenge, Jen. It is a crisis. If it wasn't a crisis, you wouldn't have sent FEMA. Biden wouldn't have sent FEMA and DHS down there. And where is Joe? Oh, that's right. He has no current plans to visit the border. That was one of Trump's last stops in his final days. He went down to the border and inspected the wall. and talked with the border agents and thanked them for the hard work they did. You know, back in World War II, they referred to Douglas MacArthur as Dugout Doug because of what happened in the Philippines and Corregidor. Now, granted, FDR couldn't let a four-star general fall into the hands of the Japanese, plus the MacArthurs were personal friends of the Roosevelt family. But I talked to many people before they passed that lived through that era, and they all called him Dugout Doug. Well, I guess today we have Bunker Biden. Now, MacArthur did return, even though Nimitz said the Philippines were not vital to the defeat of Japan. He wanted to bypass it. He's like, this doesn't fit into the grand scheme. It's going to take a lot of resources, a lot of men, a lot of equipment, just so Doug can get a splash in the headlines and he can fulfill the promise he made to the Philippine people that I shall return. That will be debated from now until the end of time on whether we should have gone in and taken the Philippines back. Like any campaign, it was costly, but it did wind up. There were some good things. The Japanese fleet finally came out and we annihilated it. What was left of it was annihilated. The Yamato got away. But the threat of the IJN was ended during the Philippine campaign. And if you've ever heard of the Marianas Turkey Shoot, the Japanese had a battle plan of Go, which they marshaled every plane they could to try and defeat and sink our task forces. This was before they instituted the kamikaze Divine Wind battle plan. We saw a touch of it at the Philippines. We saw a little more at Iwo Jima. And then we saw hell break loose at Okinawa. It's a damn good thing they didn't implement that during the Philippines, or it could have been a different story for our naval forces. But getting back to immigration, you better open the door, Joe. You better let the governor's people go in. You better let the press go in. Because this is a fuse that we don't want lit. And tomorrow, I will be broadcasting live on BBS 1 at 2 o'clock Central Time. And we're going to talk. We're going to talk sports. I'll probably do a book review. Maybe a few current events and politics. If you like what you hear, I have a Jeff Dawson, Patreon, Jeff Dawson. Please help me, because right now I need it. If you don't like donating because you're not sure where your money's going to and supporting that type of work, go to Jeff Dawson at Amazon.com. I've got 18 different books out there. And I like to say there's something for everyone because I don't write in one genre. And that's all I've got for this morning. And I will talk to you all later. Oh, later today, I'm going to do what I've been putting off is the discussion on HR1. I got on a site where they were asking for donations, and I've seen the polls that say, I think overall, like 67% of Americans are in favor of this. Well, my question to them is, what questions are they being asked? And the poll I saw was based off of 1,600 folks. I want to know the questions they ask, and they don't show that in the polls. And I can come up with a list of questions that I would say yes to without reading the bill, but I've read the bill. Most haven't. So I'll probably be discussing that, I don't know, later today about 1 or 2 o'clock. We'll see how that works out. Well, that's all I've got for right now, and I will talk to you all later.